Hello, everybody. We're at another episode of The Journey podcast radio, and we focus on palliative care and all issues surrounding palliative care from diagnosis through bereavement. So the whole time period, whether you're on hospice or not, whether you're going to survive your illness or not this time around. Some people are going to have milder run-ins with whatever disease process they're dealing with at the time and fully expect to recover. Palliative care is still appropriate for that group of people. Palliative care is appropriate anytime you have a serious illness, anytime you have any illness, anytime you're dealing with anything that has symptoms that will distress you. We proactively deal with it and handle it concurrently with cure-directed treatments. So that's the focus of the show. And also we do a lot of end-of-life discussion and talking in hospice and bereavement and issues that are hard for us. So today I bring Ellen Rand, and so I'm going to read you a little bit about her so you can know who she is before we get started. Okay, let me go over here. And so Ellen Rand has been a journalist for more than 40 years, including 5 years as a housing columnist for the New York Times. She is a hospice volunteer with Holy Name Medical Center in Bergen County, New Jersey, a member of the Hospice Volunteer Association and the Association of Healthcare Journalists. Her essays have appeared in several medical humanities publications, including Pulse, Voices from the Heart of Medicine, Kevin MD, and Life Matters Media, and she blogs at lastcomforts.com. Welcome, Ellen.
Thank you, Deanna. I really appreciate it.
Yes, well, I'm so glad you're here. I love it when journalists are with me because you all are very insightful and know how this goes and have lots of stories, and so I'm really excited to have you with us sharing your insights about hospice and what brought you here. So what I like to start with is what emotionally drew you into the end-of-life world?
Basically, like a lot of boomers, I've gone through the illness and deaths of my parents. And when my dad died in 2000, it was sort of your typical difficult medicalized version. And he was a lifelong diabetic. And there were several specialists dealing with him, and they didn't sort of communicate greatly with each other or with us. And it was just kind of a nightmare, we'll put it that way. And I remember asking one of his doctors, can you recommend him to hospice at this point? And he said, I can't say that he's terminal. And then my father died 2 weeks later. So it was difficult, it was traumatic for the family, etc. Fast forward 5 years later, when my mother died, it was a completely different story because she had been diagnosed with a brain tumor. And she decided after she had a round of whole brain radiation that was it. She just wanted to be in her home and be comfortable and be taken care of there. And that's how we did it. And she had care 24/7. And she had hospice care for almost 2 years, which now would be sort of unheard of. But at the time, they did keep recertifying her because she did keep declining. And it made such a huge difference, not only for her comfort and her care, but for the family as well, because it really sort of gave us a roadmap of what to expect and how to deal with certain things. And they were available 24/7 on the phone. And when you're going through this, you don't come into this world knowing how to deal with people's illness and decline and death. You don't. So when you have somebody literally holding your hand, or walking you through it, it's just a tremendous thing. So several years after my mother died, when there was a little item in the newspaper, in our local newspaper, looking for volunteers for Holy Name Medical Center, I thought, well, I can do that. And that's what I decided to do. I also thought at the time, being that my background has been in writing and what have you, reporting, that I could help people if they wanted to do their own life stories, help them do life review, et cetera, et cetera. As it's turned out, that really hasn't been anything that I've been able to do with people. What I found is that people come into hospice so late, which is what prompted me to write the book in the beginning. Right. People come into this so late that they're either too ill or too debilitated, or I deal with a lot of people with dementia, so that's sort of like not in the picture. But that's how I got involved.
Beautiful. And that is how, like you volunteering with hospice right now is so appreciated. I know I've worked in hospice many years myself. The volunteers are the lifeblood of any hospice. And so we appreciate you. And I'm so grateful that you feel called to do that. And, you know, when you were talking about the illness decline and the death, that people don't know how to do it. Well, do you know they used to? Because our mothers, our grandmothers, our aunts, our cousins.
That's right. And now it's hidden away. It's in the hospital. We don't see it. We don't see it in our culture. We see a lot of violent and crazy and horrible deaths in our TV shows and movies and et cetera, but we don't really see what it really looks like.
People used to die more suddenly. They used to die sooner. Now, because of the way medicine has progressed wonderfully, that's awesome, but we have a whole new way of dying now that's new.
Right.
We didn't have all this chronic advanced illness of 20 years of people lingering like that and keeping them alive at all costs along the way. So it's like a whole new animal death is now.
Absolutely.
And so used to, like before hospitals took over and funeral homes took over, we did know. But in this new world, over the last 60, 70 years, we don't know. We've created a whole new thing. Absolutely. We don't know. So I'm really glad that you're talking about your experience, because everybody that shares the good and the bad, we love hospice, we love end-of-life workers. The thing is that there are a lot of places we can all get better. So I'm really grateful that you're sharing your story. So tell us about your book. So what's in your book?
The book is divided sort of into three parts. The first part has to do with a number of the people that I had come to know over the years, because to me, they really sort of personified a lot of the issues that are out there.
So these are the volunteer, as a volunteer, the people you came to know? Yes. Okay.
Yes. Of course, their names have been changed and certain details have been to protect their privacy and etc. But I wanted to honor them. I wanted to honor their lives. And I wanted to talk about my journey as a hospice volunteer, how it began, what the training was like, and how reality really is kind of different from what you're trained to do in certain ways. For example, we did not have a lot of training in dealing with dementia patients, and I see a lot of people with dementia, and you really sort of have to learn how to communicate on a different plane completely. I mean, I find music is a great thing to do. I use my wonderful little cell phone and play all kinds of music for people, but you have to meet people where they are and not where you want them to be. Right. I've learned how to do that. So that's the first part. And then the second part, I tend to be an optimist by nature. I don't want to just talk endlessly about what the problems are. You know, what are the solutions? Who are the pathfinders? Who's doing great work? So the second part is really all about some of these pathfinders and some of the innovations that I think will make a huge difference, particularly as the baby boomers, get to that stage, whenever that may happen. As I said before, what prompted me to start writing and researching the book to begin with was that when I was a volunteer early on, it seemed to me that so many people were just coming to this so late, which was a shame because it really takes time to establish a relationship and to establish that trust and that friendship on which all of this is based, the ability to communicate with people, to be their friend. One person once described it as, you're like their last best friend. I don't know how true that is, but it's one way of describing it. But that takes time. And it's not just hospice. I think palliative care is just a huge benefit to people, and not enough people know about it. So the second part, I started to write about, why is this? Why don't people get there sooner? So I started looking at things like, how are physicians educated about this? How are nurses educated about this? And because a lot of people, many of us will spend our last days probably in a long-term setting, and, just shoot me isn't a plan. For a lot of us, we may end up in some sort of facility. Are there alternatives to what we normally think of as a skilled nursing facility, which has all kinds of terrible implications? Right. Well, yes, there are. There really are some excellent alternatives. And I do talk somewhat about our media and our culture and a couple of programs that really kind of went against the grain in terms of this is what illness and death look like.
Right.
And they're just incredibly, incredibly moving. And then the last part basically is for people who are either caring for people who are going through serious illness now or dealing with it themselves, sort of like a consumer's guide to navigating the present.
Great. So tell me, so let's touch on the 3 parts.
Yes.
So the first part. So what I love about the first part, like you're talking about, tell me again, what was the first part in your words?
About the people. The
Oh,
people
your stories and how you dealt with some of them that weren't in your training. You know, it's so interesting. I went to visit somebody recently. The daughter asked me to go see her mother to find, kind of do an assessment. Well, that was great for her to do that. And she had this, what she wanted me to do while I was there. And she had dementia. And so, affected by dementia. And so, as you know, the trip did not go as the daughter wanted it to go. She was obsessed with Nancy Reagan. Mm-hmm. And so she had just died. And so I got my cell phone out and we started going through Nancy Reagan pictures and stories. And she wanted to share. She was just talking about her for the whole 2 hours. It was awesome.
Yeah.
It was her thing. And I think that's what, talk more about that. Like going as a person, I think a lot of people feel inadequate when they go to volunteer. They think, what do I know? What if I don't do it right? What if la 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 la? But
what if I say something stupid? When I was in training, a couple of people were asking, our volunteer coordinator, well, what if I say something stupid? What if I come across as being really negative or something? And I think if you like people, if you really want to reach out and just be there, you can.
Talk about following your discernment, because I think if people trusted themselves more, that, you're a woman or a man in your 30s, 40s, 50s, or 60s, you've been around, you've gotten out of life scrapes before. This is not like that, but it is scary because we take it very seriously. We want to be making a difference, and we want to provide comfort and peace. So share with us some of the things that were kind of outside the box for you. Maybe one thing.
One of the great things about being a reporter is that, you learn how to talk to people. And basically I feel like, well, I know my story, but I don't know yours, so tell me about you. And to the extent that people can tell me, that kind of gets things going. There was one woman I dealt with. She was really fabulous. So the first time I met her, she said, "Where did you get that blouse? It's great." So, we talked a lot about fashion and stuff like that. I mean, I've talked to guys about sports. I'm a big Yankees fan and a big Giants fan. So, we talk about sports.
You just hit a key point, storytelling. You know how sometimes you go, well, what was I supposed to do? So I always ask, the people I work with, remember storytelling. Just put it in your brain. Anything, if you remember, oh, I can do storytelling, not you doing it, encouraging them to tell you about their life. That's beautiful.
Yes. There was one woman, I absolutely adored her. She was, kind of vinegary, you could say. And, the first thing that she asked me is, well, if you're a volunteer, what are you going to do for me? So I said, well, I'm basically here to hang out with you and chat with you and whatever, and it turned out she had been a secretary at the American Embassy in Cambodia a long time ago, and she liked hearing about anything travel related. And so what we did was we used her daughter's laptop computer, and I looked up Cambodia, images of Cambodia and everything, and then she would tell me a couple of stories about her time there, which was pretty amazing.
So do you find that in all your years, if you remember one thing to be able to wing it on, it would be encouraging them to tell stories?
I think it's just basically meeting people where they are. I mean, I've been with a lot of people who they're fatigued, they're sad, they want to be quiet, and I can do that. I mean, I sit with people, I hold their hands if they want. I'm happy to do that. So it really depends on them. Right,
exactly. I just mean the talkative ones. Yes, very good. Awesome. So move to the second piece. So the innovations. What are the innovations that you're finding?
Oh my goodness. Let's talk about long-term care, because I think that that's going to affect so many people, particularly people with, all varieties of dementia.
Okay.
And there's something called the household model.
Okay.
Greenhouse is a variant of the household. It's also sometimes called small houses. They're different from what's called board and care homes in that they are small homes, but the training and the philosophy and the operating philosophy of these homes is very, very different. Essentially, they're based on the idea of patient-centered care and culture change. Now, basically what that means is that instead of being regimented in terms of you get up at such and such an hour, you get dressed at such and such an hour, you get, 3 times a week, you get a shower at this particular time, you eat here at this time, you eat there at that time. No, what happens in these households is you get up when you want, you eat when you want, you do pretty much what you want. You tend to have a private bedroom with a private bathroom. There's a central area where people gather. There's a central kitchen. And essentially these homes, and it's not just freestanding, there are a couple of urban varieties also, where there's one kitchen for every 10 to 20 people.
Wow. Okay.
It's a much more human scale. It's much more relaxed. It's more home than nursing.
Yeah. Interesting. What else are you finding?
I'm talking to a number of people about improving education for med students and for nursing students.
Great.
And particularly at Albany Medical School, you have a requirement where you do a rotation in the hospice.
Uh-huh.
And, a lot of med students really don't come face to face with death early on. And so they learn a tremendous amount, not only about the process, but about the people and how to relate to people. And the encouraging thing to me is that a lot of them want to sort of bring all the insights that they've gotten from these experiences, into their practices later on. One of the best things that's going on, I think, is the emphasis on coordinated care. One of the problems with being ill and having multiple chronic illnesses, I think, is that you're dealing with this specialist here and that specialist there, and a lot of ologists, as people call it. And do they talk to each other? Not necessarily. And if you go, for example, from a hospital to a post-acute care setting, or even back to your own home, well, what happens in that gap?
Right.
What kind of care is really necessary, and who's going to take care of you? Are
you finding somebody that's feeling that navigation piece, or that? Are you finding?
Several people. I think Aetna was one of the pioneers. Kaiser Permanente was a real pioneer. Aetna has a compassionate care program, and essentially a lot of these programs use a nurse practitioner as the sort of navigator and the central point of contact. If you have a question, if you have a problem, you just want to talk, you want to bounce ideas off of that person, that's what that nurse practitioner is there for.
So it's coming from the insurance company. That's the only unifying entity in the whole thing, actually. So that's good. And very good. Okay. So you're having a good experiences with that. You're hearing.
And I think the whole model of hospice and palliative care in terms of the interdisciplinary team makes a huge amount of sense. You have people who, the medical specialty, the nurse practitioner, the chaplain, the social worker, and the volunteers also, let us not forget.
Excuse me. Yeah, the hospice model is awesome. Palliative care is awesome. I feel like palliative care is Western medicine's best holistic medicine branch. It's beautiful. And I'm really glad your book. So the third group that you talk about, the third section is about the caregivers. Yeah, and about some practical things like doing an advanced care plan. Thinking about some of the things that you need to think about. What do you feel about CPR? What do you feel about mechanical ventilation? What do you feel about artificial feeding, and et cetera? And also some notes on what good palliative care should look like. Good, great. And, how to evaluate nursing homes, how to evaluate hospices, sort of debunking a few myths about hospice, because people don't often understand that, no, it's not necessarily a place. You can be in your own home, or you can be in a nursing home and have hospice care too. Right. Beautiful, beautiful. So what's one of the biggest take-homes that you found for yourself as you were, yeah, either writing the book, maybe, you know, because you're doing some more research, I'm sure. Is there anything that you learned in writing the book?
Well, I learned about all these wonderful things that are going on, and you can bet that if I ever have to go into a long-term care facility, I'm not going to go into the conventional one. That's for sure. That is for sure. But basically, what I felt was that, you know, the one piece missing in the end-of-life realm these days, because there are so many fabulous things happening with nursing and medical training and et cetera, is that there needs to be a consumer component. And I really believe that, you know, the baby boomers, we need to get our activist genes back in gear again. You know, we need to do this differently. And I think we will.
I want to hear what I feel about hospice and palliative care, but I've been in this forever. So I want to know what you feel as someone who's experienced all of this, and you've seen it from your eyes, and you know, with your savvy as a journalist, the difference between hospice and palliative care. What do you see as the issue of both, or between them, or what's your idea about the relationship between hospice and palliative care? And I'm so happy that you actually know there's a difference.
One of the things that I call for in the book is, let's tear down the wall, you know, tear down the wall between hospice and palliative care, tear down the wall between so-called curative care and comfort care. I mean, I think the main differences between palliative and hospice are just regulatory and not philosophical or operational. That's how I see it. Yeah,
and two, that palliative care is not equivalent to hospice care. Palliative care can happen whether or not you're on hospice or not.
Right. I think Diane Meyer from the Coalition to Advance Palliative Care says it best. She says, all hospice care is palliative, not all palliative care is hospice.
Exactly. She's awesome. I love her work.
Awesome.
I love her work. Is there any jewels that you want to leave with the people that will be listening? We have a lot of people that are wanting to serve others, not only in the medical scene, but also there's a lot of death workers that call themselves end-of-life doulas, end-of-life midwives, death coaches, end-of-life guides, transition guides. You know, there's a lot of people that are starting to come out, bringing their own wisdom, and they also listen to this program a lot. And is there anything that you feel that caregivers, people in healthcare, and these other folks that I'm talking about, do you feel would be beneficial?
Can I tell you about some of my pet peeves, things that I don't want to hear?
Yeah.
I don't want to hear about closure.
Talk about that.
I don't think it exists. I don't know what it means. You know, my parents died some time ago, and I feel like there hasn't been closure. I feel like I've sort of absorbed it. It's become part of who I am. And when I see anything on the news where people talk about, well, you know, we're giving them closure. No, you're not. No, you're not. And I'd also like to not hear any more about, you know, do not go gentle into that good night. You know, fight, fight, fight. The military jargon, you know, illness as enemy, illness as military foe that you have to conquer. Well, no, it doesn't often happen that way. It really doesn't. So we need to take a breath and not do that. Because it also, I think, sometimes makes it harder for the person who's ill to be completely honest and emotional about how they're feeling. You know, one person I visited, the daughter was like, no, Mom, you have to keep fighting. Well, no. You know, and that sort of cut off the conversation in terms of, this is how I feel as I'm looking at the end of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very interesting how, I think one of the biggest issues is, are we there yet? That's the question, how I phrase it. Are we there yet? When people know that they're probably at the last, in the last months or weeks, then it's even hard then to give up, or to only do palliative care, you know. But when people aren't sure that they're there, they feel maybe we can live 5 more years, then it seems like it's just so difficult to let what's happening be.
Mm-hmm.
A way I like to think of it also, though, is this. Even if you are wanting to fight, you know, the thing is, you have to rest to heal.
Yes.
You have to rest to heal. So maybe no matter what's going on, whether you want to live another 20 years or whether you're okay with like say death is coming and you're fine with that, no matter where you are in the process, know that rest is paramount to healing. Healing doesn't mean you're going to live.
Mm-hmm.
So those are hard. It's hard to accept that.
Mm-hmm. I think it's also important not to give false hope and to say everything's going to be fine, everything's going to be fabulous, because it might not necessarily be.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to really be with somebody who's expressing sadness and or even anger, and just be as compassionate and empathetic as possible. I mean, I believe that there's hope in certain ways. You know, there's hope for having a good day. There's hope for reconciliation. There's hope for seeing another season, perhaps. But sometimes, you know, that can sound kind of hollow if somebody's really suffering.
Yeah. Yeah. Being with dying, that's the thing. And I think the more of us that share, like you're sharing, it's going to help more people to be with it and to engage with their dying and to explore it and not just act like it's another day. You know, no, you're dying, I'm not. You know, we all are dying, they say, but really you're not. You're terminal and you've got a diagnosis and it's very clear your last days are in the next couple of weeks. We're not having the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
I mean, one of the reasons that I became a volunteer too, and I didn't say this to myself at the time, although I recognized it later on, was that I wanted to sort of think about my own mortality too. Mm-hmm. And in the course of being with a lot of people, one of the things that hit me was I can still no more wrap my head around that than I could in the very beginning. Mm-hmm. It's just the way it is.
Tell us the name of your book again and where people can find it.
Oh, thank you so much. It's called Last Comforts, Notes from the Forefront of Late Life Care, and they can find it on Amazon. It's in paperback. Mm-hmm. It'll be on an ebook pretty soon.
Okay, and then you have a website, lastcomforts.com.
http://lastcomforts.com. Or you can find me at EllenRandNJ on Twitter.
Oh, great. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Ellen, for joining us. And we'll have you back because I feel like that I would like to talk to you some more and let's see what people are wanting to
talk about this all day. I know you can too.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thanks, you too.
Okay.
Bye.
The journey is sponsored by hospicetimes.com and qualityoflifecare.com. And so go visit those websites to see what they're doing. And again, we thank Ellen Rand for joining us. So y'all have a beautiful day. Take care. See you next week.